The pool incident. It was a sweltering Saturday afternoon, and Marcus Johnson was enjoying the peace and quiet of his backyard. His pool shimmered under the summer sun, a tranquil oasis he'd worked hard to maintain. As a retired police officer, Marcus valued order and respect, and his home was his sanctuary. He leaned back in his lounge chair, sipping iced tea, when he heard the gate creak open. "Excuse me," a shrill voice called out. Marcus turned to see Karen, his new neighbor, striding into his yard like she owned the place. She was dressed in a bright floral swimsuit, her sunglasses perched on her head, and her 2 kids trailing behind her, already in floaties. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, his tone calm but firm. "Yes, actually," Karen said, hands on her hips. "It's way too hot today, and my kids really want to swim. Since you're not using the pool right now, we're just going to hop in. You don't mind, do you?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Actually, I do mind. This is my private property, and you can't just walk in here uninvited." Karen scoffed. "Oh, come on, don't be so selfish. It's just a pool. What harm could it do to share?" Marcus stood up, his 6 feet 2 inches frame towering over her. "Ma'am, I don't know how things work where you're from, but around here, you don't just invite yourself into someone else's home. Now I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Karen's face turned red. "You're being ridiculous. It's not like you're using it right now. What's the big deal?" "The big deal," Marcus said, his voice steady but sharp, "is that this is my property, and you're trespassing. Leave now or I'll call the police." Karen glared at him, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Fine, but don't think this is over." She grabbed her kids by the hands and stormed out, slamming the gate behind her. Over the next few days, Marcus noticed Karen's behavior becoming increasingly hostile. She started making snide comments whenever she saw him, loud enough for him to hear but just subtle enough to avoid direct confrontation. "Some people are just so selfish," she'd say, glancing in his direction while talking to another neighbor. "Can you believe someone would refuse to let kids swim in this heat?" Marcus ignored her at first, but things took a turn for the worse when he found trash scattered around his yard one morning. Empty soda cans, candy wrappers, and even a broken pool toy were strewn across his lawn. He knew exactly who was behind it. That evening, as Marcus was cleaning up the mess, he saw Karen watching him from her window. She smirked and pulled the curtains shut. Marcus shook his head. He wasn't going to let her get under his skin, but he also wasn't going to let her get away with it. The next day, Marcus installed security cameras around his property. He knew Karen's type. She wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted, and he needed to be prepared. Sure enough, a few days later, Marcus received an alert on his phone. The motion sensor near his pool had been triggered. He opened the app and saw Karen and her kids climbing over his fence. This time, she had brought a friend along, and they were carrying pool bags and coolers like they were hosting a party. Marcus grabbed his phone and headed outside. By the time he reached the pool, Karen and her crew were already in the water, laughing and splashing around like they owned the place. "Get out of my pool," Marcus said, his voice booming across the yard. Karen turned to him, feigning innocence. "Oh, relax. We're just having a little fun. You should join us." "I'm not going to ask again," Marcus said, holding up his phone. "You're trespassing, and I have it all on camera. Either you leave now, or I'll call the police." Karen rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Like the police are going to care about a little pool party." "Try me," Marcus said, his finger hovering over the call button. Karen hesitated, then climbed out of the pool, dripping water all over the deck. "Fine, but you're going to regret this." Karen's retaliation came swiftly. The next day, Marcus received a visit from 2 police officers. They explained that a complaint had been filed against him, accusing him of harassment and threatening behavior. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "Harassment? That's rich. Let me show you something." He pulled up the footage from his security cameras and played it for the officers. They watched as Karen and her friends trespassed into his yard, ignored his warnings, and then left only after he threatened to call the police. "Looks like you're the victim here, not the other way around," one of the officers said. We'll make a note of this in the report. But Karen wasn't done. She took to social media, posting a tearful video about how Marcus had bullied her and her kids. The video went viral, and soon, Marcus found himself at the center of a neighborhood controversy. Some neighbors sided with Karen, while others defended Marcus, but the tension was palpable. Marcus decided it was time to take action. He compiled all the evidence, security footage, witness statements, and even recordings of Karen's snide comments, and filed a formal complaint against her for trespassing, harassment, and defamation. The case went to court, and Marcus's evidence was undeniable. Karen was fined for trespassing and ordered to issue a public apology. The judge also granted Marcus a restraining order, barring Karen from coming within 100 feet of his property. The aftermath. With the legal battle behind him, Marcus finally had peace again. Karen moved out of the neighborhood shortly after, unable to face the backlash from the community. Marcus's story became a cautionary tale about standing up for yourself and not letting bullies get away with their behavior. As for Marcus, he continued to enjoy his pool, knowing he'd fought hard to protect what was his. And whenever he saw a new neighbor moving in, he made sure to introduce himself early, just to set the boundaries straight from the start.